Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. It's really beautiful to see you all here. Let's take a moment to land and to arrive. I know there's always getting links and getting everything connected. So let's take a moment to breathe and ground. So I invite you to take a deep breath into your mind. Feel all that mental energy. Exhale with a sound. Just sink the mental energy down into the chest. Deep breath into the head. Gathering all your thoughts together and exhale. Sink the mental energy down to the chest. Let's take a moment to feel into the chest, into the heart, the emotional body. Feel all the emotions that have passed through you in the last 24 hours or so. And let's take a deep breath in, collect the emotional energy. And exhale, sink the energy down. Deep breath into the chest. And exhale. Grounding the emotions. And finally, we come to the lower dantian, to the belly and the genitals, the base of the body. And here we have the energy of willpower and desire. So tune in to all the desires, all that you want to do and get done. And notice that energy in your pelvis. And we take an inhale. And exhale, ground it to the earth. Good. One more deep breath into the pelvis. Exhale to the earth. Just take a moment with your eyes closed, if it's comfortable, and just feel excess energy draining out of your body into the earth. Discharge energy that you don't need, especially stress and tension. Any moment you can sigh or yawn to release. You can feel like tree roots coming out of the base of your body and just discharging and releasing and emptying out your body. Emptying. Notice that place where the floor or the seat is touching your body, your sitting bones. And just feel that connection point and drop into it. You can feel how the earth pushes up into your body and your body sinks down into the earth. Just surrender your body weight, including your shoulders, including your jaw, points of tension in your body. Just surrender them to the earth. Yeah, notice how it feels to empty out. Good. Bring the hands into Namaste. I wish to offer this webinar today to highest consciousness, to our highest potential, to the greatest good of all living beings. May we be held and guided and protected by the highest truth. So, welcome. Great to see many of you jumping on. And I was going to ask where you're all from. Some of you have already answered. So if you want to open up the comments, I've got you on different channels, but I can read them all where you are. Nice to see some familiar people coming in here. Hi to Reese there and Cesar in Tulum, Cancun, Istanbul, India, San Francisco, Ireland, Sussex. Isn't this fantastic? Oh, I love our internet world. And South Kent, Portland, Oregon, Surrey, England, Los Angeles, Glastonbury, me too. Let's meet on the tour later. Hi there from Brussels. Nice. Sweden, England, Northumberland. Yay. Amazing. Ah, isn't this just, it's so fantastic that we can meet like this. So I'll tell you a little bit about the intention for today's webinar. South Africa too, making an entry here. I'll tell you a little bit about today's webinar and the intention. And also I like to do interactive things so that you can add in and bring your questions and curiosities as well. So the intention of today is to really share about what the male sexual practices are in the Tao Tantric Arts and explain a little bit about solo practices. So as many of you know, I'm part of Mantek Chia's lineage, part of the Tao Tantric Arts. I've been teaching this work for over 20 years. And I run very big trainings, month-long trainings and 6-month-long trainings. And these trainings are really going deep into solo practices. I'm also part of the Tantra scene. And in the Tantra world, there is a lot of experiential Tantra going on. So many of you have been in that world, I'm sure. And there's lots of workshops where you get to interact with different people. And you can feel a lot of energy in that world of Tantra. But what's often missing in Neo-Tantra is understanding how to work with energy. And this is the genius of the Taoist lineage. So the Tao Tantric Arts is really like the engineering of sexuality and of Tantra work. And it's really going deep into how to move our sexual energy on our own. And it's almost seen as like the body is an instrument, and we want to learn how to flow and move our own sexual energy and have mastery on that. And then we can make music with others. So the Taoist practices have this philosophy of tune your own instrument first, and then you can make perfect music with others. So the intention of today's call is to really help you to understand what those practices are. Some of you may already be doing them. Others, you're new to it. Be lovely for me to hear a bit from you on that. I've got more countries coming in. We've got Somerset, same as me, England, Surrey, and Canada. I would love if you could go to the chat box again and tell me a little bit about your experience with solo practices. So you could write the word new if you're new to it, a little, a lot, and tons. Just give me a little bit of an idea so I can feel who's here today and what your experience is. So I'd love it if you can add in there and I get a bit of a sense of how much experience you have. So we've got a new. That's great. That's really good for me. And then we've got Cliff is here with 26 years. I hope I can bring you something new, Cliff. And then new and intermediate. And it's lovely to see you. Doing sexual alchemy for 4 years. Fantastic. Intermediate, familiar, little and growing. Very good. New, a little, new. Great. Okay, good. Happy to see that there are some beginners as well as those with 26 years of experience. Great. And intermediate. So some of you are already on the path, studied but not practiced. Okay, super. So yeah, this is also something. So I'm going to tell you a bit about how I got into these practices. So when I was 20, I actually didn't enjoy sex when I was before 20. I found it a bit boring. I wondered what all the jazz was about. And I got far more interested in spirituality. I went off to India looking for enlightenment. I went finding gurus and, I was really like, spirituality is way more interesting than sex. I don't get what it's all about. And when I was sitting with this great enlightened master doing Advaita Vedanta, if any of you know that, I had this full-blown kind of awakening that blew my mind of like, wow, I am that. And in this realization, a lot of laughter, just a huge awakening. And my awakening was at the same time as a man who was sitting next to me. So we were both being sort of blown open together. And lo and behold, we turned and looked at each other and we were just like laughing and crying together. And we were recognizing divinity in each other. We're like, wow, there it is. And we fell in love. However, we started our relationship. And although I had, like entered into this deep spirituality of recognizing the divine truth in and through everything, and especially through him, I had not integrated that through the body at all. I had really bypassed the human realm of love and intimacy. I just hadn't worked out how it fitted together. And so falling in love was a really good calling, as it is. This man, however, he was much older and more experienced than me. He was more than a decade older. And when we started to make love, I couldn't believe it. The lovemaking we had, there was no reference point to it from anything I had ever experienced before. So before had been at university, at school time, and it had just been a bit of pumping and thrusting. And to be honest, I remember at university just kind of waiting for it to be over. And I can't believe that I can say that now, but I was really kind of like, it was something that I felt that I did because he wanted it, and I liked the relationship. So I really had a terrible relationship with sex. And then when I made love with this tantric partner, I was just blown away. We were in lovemaking for hours, and it was nothing like what I had experienced until that moment. My whole body became flooded with what felt like light, and it was shaking, and it felt like this light was like pushing my body open and pushing it open, and it was like this fountain coming up and cracking open my heart and cracking open my throat and blasting like fireworks through my face, and then expanding beyond the room. And like we were just like in these waves of orgasmic bliss, and these waves rippled out and touched the stars and touched the universe. And I was like weeping and crying, just dying into this bliss, and just expanding, expanding, expanding. It was completely in a different category from what I had previously known in the category of making love or sex. Needless to say, I stayed with that man for 9 years. After some time of making love with him, though, I started to feel like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know how he's doing this. I don't even know what's happening. And it made me feel a bit of, it was wonderful to receive this transmission, but it made me feel like not an imposter, but like, I don't know. I just wanted to feel more empowered. I wanted to know what was happening, and I wanted to understand it more and not be so completely dependent on him. So I asked him, and he presented me with a book that was called the sexual the healing, I don't remember the name of it, like the Universal Healing Tao for Women, the old-fashioned book of Mantak Chia's, which was Sexual Arts for Women. Now, if any of you have read the old-fashioned books, the original ones, they're really hard to understand. So I opened this book, and it was about like this point here and Ming Men point and circulating energy 36 times and pulling up the breath and channeling the energy. And so I felt a bit overwhelmed, and I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to be tantric. This is so complicated. Luckily, I saw at the beginning of the book, the Mantak Chia lived in Thailand, which is the country I lived in. So I signed up for a training. I went to Tao Garden. I did the women's training in sexual arts, and I have not looked back since. Now I'm running the teacher training for women and training for men in this arts. So this is what I am passionate to share with the world. And especially as I see in Tantra, like I said before, there's so much kind of going for experiential Tantra, like some eye gazing, learning how to touch, wheel of consent, temple nights and play parties, and lots around connection. And yet there's just not enough focus on solo practices and how to master our own sexual energy. And I hear again in workshops and festivals, men being confused. Like, how do we deal with this? Like, what is ejaculation control all about? How do men have full body orgasms? What do we need to learn to do with our energy, with sexuality? What if we do ejaculation control and then we have blue balls and pain and frustration? Like, what's the point of it, and how do we do it? So this is something that I really wanted to explain today. And I'd like to give you a take home as well, which is a self-pleasure practice that you can practice today, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. That is going to give you mastery of your sexual energy. So does that sound good? I hope so. Great. So, so where do we begin? I'm going to begin with, I think, the biggest question for men, which is about ejaculation. So, phenomenal, awesome, great. So let's start with that big myth or rumor. When people hear about tantric sex, I'd say the biggest thing they say is, oh, tantric sex, that's that one where you don't ejaculate, right? Or that's that one where we go on for hours. And then I hear men going, don't ejaculate? How on earth am I going to do that? Like when I try not ejaculating after 3 days, I've got blue balls and I'm frustrated and like, what's this all about? And then there are men who try really hard and they end up feeling like energetically constipated and like, or men stop ejaculating, but they also lose orgasm. And they're like, well, what's the point of this? Is it just so my woman can have sex for longer? So I want to dispel all of those myths. The purpose of having ejaculatory choice, and I'm not calling it ejaculatory control, I'm calling it ejaculatory choice. And the purpose of that is about retaining energy inside your body, and not only retaining it, but building your energy up through your energy centers, or like your chakras, so you can raise your frequency. So it is a spiritual technique of building up your frequency. Okay, so it's not just a kind of energy. When we say you lose energy from ejaculating, it's not just about being tired. And you may know, especially the older you get, you ejaculate and then you're like, need to fall asleep. Yes, there is that temporary loss of energy. But what we're talking about in building energy is not just about getting tired. We're talking about building energy, cultivating energy inside your body so that you build this like strong frequency of life force energy that raises your consciousness. So it's more than about tiredness, it's about level of consciousness that you get to live at. And what the ancient sages in both Tantra and Taoism discovered is that when we have climax orgasms, we dispel life force energy back to the earth. And this is true for women as well as for men. Not female ejaculation, which kind of needs another word, which gives energy, but female climax orgasm. So if women are rubbing on the clitoris, or you're rubbing on the clitoris and they have that kind of climax orgasm, they also lose energy. For a man, it's more obvious. Again, there's often a speed, and then energy goes down. We can get easily addicted to climax orgasms, men and women, because of this sense of release, and we're using it to release tension out of our body. And we can get it really addicted to that moment of release. It feels like a mini moment of death, a mini moment where you just get to release all the stresses of life, right? And that's why it can become very appealing. However, if it's at the cost of losing energy, it's a very, very big cost. It's also at another cost that many people don't realize, and that is it's at the cost of full body orgasms. When we have local climax orgasms, we cannot have full body orgasms because, well, I'll explain why. So ejaculatory mastery isn't, I'd like to say that it's not really about ejaculation at all. The fact that you may not ejaculate is like, it's like a byproduct. The important thing is that you are allowing energy to rise in your body. This is actually the more important thing in the sexual arts. And as a byproduct, men discover they often don't ejaculate, or it's much, much less. But when you focus on trying not to ejaculate, you're focusing on the wrong thing. And so many men get into quite a forceful relationship with their own sexual energy, trying to hold back and force themselves not to ejaculate. But then, like I said, feeling tense and kind of feeling energetically constipated, feeling frustrated. And what's the point of that? You're wondering, what's all of this for? So I'm going to invite you with this topic of ejaculatory mastery to move your whole focus away from this idea of just not ejaculating, and move it instead onto focusing on how can I implode my sexual energy? How can I let my sexual energy rise up through my body instead of contracting and pushing it out? Okay, so this is the focus. And then it doesn't matter if you ejaculate or not, because even if you did ejaculate, if you pull all the sexual energy up to the higher centers and then still have a physical ejaculation, you're not going to lose so much energy anyway. So this is the more important thing we want to focus on. So let's talk a little bit about those orgasms so you can understand it a bit more. And the reason we need to really talk about this is that our media, both Hollywood and pornography, have shown us one type of orgasm. And so we grew up with it, we mimicked it ourselves, we learned it from other lovers, and we figured that that's the way sexual energy moves. And that's called the contractive orgasm or the climax. And that's just taken as norm. Like, people don't even question it until they, like me at the age of 20, experience something else. And then you're like, wait, nobody told me this was even possible. So that contractive orgasm is the result of when you're getting aroused and you're feeling sexual energy, you feel it in your pelvis, you feel it in your genitals, you're getting aroused. We meet that arousal habitually with tension. So you get aroused and then you and then you have to release that energy back down to the earth. Now, in Tantra and Taoism, sexual energy is seen as sourced from nature, sourced from the earth. So when you look around at nature in beautiful Somerset here, you see all these trees and plants and flowers all juicy and sexy, and they're all pushing up from the earth to the sky. This is the sexual energy. It's the energy of creation. It's also called Shakti. And this energy of Shakti comes up through our bodies, just as it does through a tree or a flower. And it comes up through our roots into our perineum, which connects us to the earth, and into our genitals. And so we have this creative energy in our body too. And when it hits our genitals, we call it eros or arousal. It's our sexual energy, and it bubbles through our genitals and makes us feel so turned on. It's a very yummy feeling. However, we've been taught to feel that arousal and start contracting our muscles. And we don't even question it because we saw it so much. And so then what happens is it's a bit like a water balloon that fills up to a certain point and then it just can't take anymore. And so it's got to burst. And all that energy that came up from Mother Nature into our genitals, we release it back down to the earth again. And a man's body will ejaculate at that point, and a woman will have a climax. And both of these are called explosive orgasms because they explode the energy back out of our body. So what's happening here is we never get to build energy in our body. We never get to let that incredible creative life force rise up beyond our lower chakras and enter into the higher energy centers unless we're doing practices. And so we keep ourselves small. We make ourselves get addicted. It's easy. We know how massive porn addiction is, fantasy addiction, sexual addiction, climax addiction. We can get addicted, but we're addicted to losing energy. We could get exhausted afterwards. And Mantak Chia has many books where he shows the older you get, the more exhausted you're going to get after ejaculating or climaxing. You're just going to get more and more depleted. So there are really no benefits. We think there is because we get that moment of release and it's like, oh, that's such a good moment. But what we are not getting is something that many people don't even know exist, which is that what happens when that energy gets to rise up through our energy centers. And this takes us into full body energy orgasms, which are just as available for men as they are for women. So the essence of the Tao Tantric Art practices for men and for women is to learn how to relax upon arousal. And this is the habit that we need to relearn and to teach ourselves. We're undoing the habit of tensing and we're building the habit of relaxing. So what happens when you get aroused and you relax? So that energy pushes up from the earth and but instead of going, we go, and that energy for a moment, it feels like it gets less because it's expanding. It's not being held in that little tight contractive space. It's expanding. But then more comes, and expands again. And then more comes, and then it starts to push up through our energy centers or our chakras. And that energy can rise up through the second chakra and take us into more pleasure. It can rise up through the third chakra and take us into our power. It can rise up through our fourth chakra and open our hearts, up through our throat, take us into the ether. This is the portal through to the spiritual realm. When sexual energy rises through the throat, we start to enter the quantum field beyond space and time. It's called Vishuddha chakra. And then when sexual energy can rise into the brain, it's hitting our pineal gland. Our brain becomes filled with orgasmic light, like a firework, and our brains are blown out. And we are taken beyond our limited perception of reality, taken beyond our limited beliefs. And this is where we start to enter altered states of consciousness, higher states of consciousness. Many tantrics will tell you you don't need drugs when you're doing these practices because sexual energy will take you into altered states. And there are now more and more studies showing what happens when we can pull up sexual energy and activate the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, the shifts. So many of you know Joe Dispenza. He's doing a lot of practices pulling up sexual energy, although he doesn't call it sexual energy, pulling it up into the brain and measuring what happens to people's consciousness, their ability to manifest, their health, their well-being. All of these things are now being studied. But the tantrics and Taoists knew it a long time ago. We can also let orgasm rise all the way up to the crown, and then it's going to expand into infinity. And this is where you have the feeling of connecting to the universe, a true merging with God, whatever you want to call it, quantum field, God, existence, but this feeling of absolute unity with all that is. This happens when sexual energy rises all the way from sex to spirit. So this is called, we often say it's like ejaculating into the universe. Instead of ejaculating out of the physical body into the earth, we're pulling the sexual energy up and it pours out of our head like a fountain, and our energy merges with existence. I believe we all have a need for this, or perhaps a longing. I don't know if need is too strong a word, but I think it could even be a need for this level of expansion. What I observe is that people, if they're always in the lower chakras, if your energy is always stuck in the physical material realm, you get up, you go to your job, you do your day-to-day thing, you eat the same food, you come home again, and you feel stuck. You're also stuck in an identity. This is who I am. This is how my wife knows me. My friends know me. This is my personality. We're stuck in a little box. It's a small box of our life. It's a small identity. It's a small job. It's a small box, and we feel stuck in it. The way out that people, there's a yearning, a need, a desire to get, we know we're bigger than that. We know there's more to life, whether it's a sense of like, there's got to be more to life, or whether you have a sense of there's more to me and I don't know how to be it and express it, but I know there's more. This sense is the yearning to expand our energy out of the lower chakras. And the thing is, nobody told us that. Nobody explained it to us. Nobody told us that orgasm could be the root either. And so we don't understand it. So in culture, most people fulfill this longing with drugs and alcohol, because when you use these kind of substances, they do expand your energy, but often at the cost of your consciousness. So this is very important to understand. You can expand your energy, but at the cost of your consciousness. So like you could get really drunk and, have you see people's energy body getting bigger, their voices are louder, like there is an expansion, but you also see the consciousness level going down, right? And so that's a big expense. In Tantra, we want to be super conscious and expand. And so we do that by learning how to have full body orgasms and learning how to pull our sexual energy up into our body. And then what happens is as energy rises from the heart upwards, as it rises through the upper chakras, we get that we're yearning for. Wow, I am this, I am that, I am the universe. I'm as vast as this universe. This is who I am. And we know in moments of ecstasy, we know this is it. This is who I am. This is it. Maybe you've had that moments of ecstatic dance when you just crack open, or I remember going to the Grand Canyon in the States and just standing there and you're like, boom, it's like you're looking straight at God, and you know, like life is big, it's vast, it's much bigger than our 9 to 5 or our daily grind or our 3 meals a day. It's so vast. And that longing is to touch that and then bring it back into the small self, into the daily life, and integrate it so that we can live as that vastness living our daily life. And that is the Tao Tantric path. That is the point of a tantric practice. It's not just about having sex for longer. It's not just about having bigger, better orgasms. That's just a side effect. There's a deeply spiritual and self-development part of it, which is I want to live my highest potential and I want to embody that and live it every day of my life. I want to be the embodiment of that I touch in my moments of ecstasy. So learning how to draw sexual energy up through our chakras, through our energy centers, is this amazing journey of going from physical, opening and expanding our energy body lighter and lighter until our energy body is expanded into the quantum field. So does that sound good? And then what happens is it's not only this transient experience of in the moment of full body orgasm, feeling like I'm one with all it is, but also as it's a practice that we keep circulating and bringing into our center, we're also embodying that in our center. The center is very, very important in the Taoist practices. Otherwise, we could get just as addicted to the bliss experience as we are to having a normal ejaculation. We can get addicted to experience. And the only way out of that is integration. When we can integrate profound experiences into our energy body, into our core, then we don't get addicted. We get integrated and we become that we're yearning for. So it's a deep sense of fulfillment from centering. Doesn't that sound good? Sign me up. Exactly. So how do we get there? Let's talk about that. So I've given you a little taste of what it's all about. Some of you know some of these practices, and some of you, this is like opening something new. First thing I want to say is that I don't think it's ever helpful to shame or wrong anything. So if you are, watching lots of porn and masturbating and ejaculating and so on, don't start with like huge self-judgment and like, oh my God, more shame and not telling anyone. Just accept that that's what society gave you. That's the most important step, is to accept where we're at and to say, okay, this is what society gave me, and now I'm ready to see what else is out there. Because shame is incredibly contractive, right? We're talking about expanding here. And if we're filled with self-judgment and shame and, oh, I've got to hide this thing, we're actually contracting. Part of this body of work is loving acceptance. And there's also a lot of shadow healing that happens as we work with sexual energy in this way, because all the contracted parts of ourselves that we ever judged and shamed are going to be liberated energetically. And so this includes even emotions. For example, many women were taught that anger is shameful and you should never be angry as a woman. And many men have been taught never to cry or show vulnerability. So each of us have our conditioning around things that we learn to be ashamed of, and you have your own unique patterns around this depending on your parents and your culture. But there are definitely some standard ones. Whatever you were taught to shame is a piece of life force that gets pushed down into your underworld, into your basement, and locked away. But the sexual energy, as I said, is this bubbling energy coming up from the earth and coming up through our bodies. So in order to say yes to sexuality, we need also to have an openness to all the pieces of life within us and to start healing shame. So we want to be extremely loving and accepting of every part of ourself and welcome everything in to our practices. Becoming spiritual isn't about bypassing. It isn't about like, oh, now I'm going to wear white and self-pleasure with my crystals and just express it all as divine. The rocket fuel of the light is the darkness. The greatest flowers grow from the deepest, darkest soil, right? The deepest, darkest mud grows the most beautiful lotus. And so actually our desires and our yearnings and our sexuality, the dark masculine that you have in you, the dark feminine that we have in us, the repressed slut that we might have, the repressed desire, the fantasies, the yearnings, all of these pieces are the soil, the rich soil in which our sexual energy grows. But when we cut those pieces off from the heart and from consciousness, they fester like anything else that's cut off from the light. You know, that you've always found, you find those places in the garden where all the leaves are rotting and it stinks. And, you know, so if we have a big split between our dark side and our light side, then the darkness will turn into shadow and it will rot. So in Tantra and Tao Tantric Arts, we want to embrace everything and shine love into the darkest places. So whatever your current sexual desires are, or wherever your sexuality is, whatever habits you have, shine the light of loving acceptance into them. Like this is life happening through you, and heal that shame. It's particularly important to note down what are the parts of your sexuality that you hope other people wouldn't ever find out, especially your own partner if you're in a relationship. Because often we bring to a relationship, here's my light side, here's my great personality and my wonderful job, and here's my nice, here's how kind I am, here's how generous, here's all my light bit. Here, I bring this to the relationship. But I hope you never find out that I have this bit too. And so often, so people will go and have an affair when there's this split, because it's like, okay, well, to my wife or my beloved, I'm bringing the kindness and the generosity and but I'll go to a prostitute, or I'll go have this affair where I can express my rage and my, like wanting to pin a woman down, or that dark bit, because I can't bring that to her. But when we split ourselves like this, it's immensely painful to feel split in ourselves, to split our dark and our light. And it prevents healing, because healing is wholeness. So in the Tao Tantric Arts, our dark side is welcome as the very compost in which our flowers are growing. And there's so much energy there. There's so much energy there. So what we want to do is find the space to be vulnerable and bring our shadowy pieces into the presence of love. I just finished running a couples retreat yesterday here in Glastonbury. And one of the things I did for the couples on the last day is I said, let's just have a space where you can share a desire or fantasy or some piece of yourself that you haven't even dared to express yet to your partner because of fear of it being rejected. But we start with this line, there's this part of me that's really vulnerable to share, and I really fear that you're going to judge it, or I fear that you're going to reject me because of it. Would you be willing to hold a safe space and bring as much love as you can when I share it? So we open with a request, and then we share with our vulnerability. Always had this fantasy of having a threesome, the thought of having two lovers and me surrendering, it just makes my whole body expand. It's really vulnerable to say this, whatever it is. It's just a simple example, but so bringing our shadow into the light is a very important part of this work, so that we can be integrated and also liberate the energy that lives in our dark sexual self. So for many of you, it's dark masculine. I can't go too much into that right now, but as I've mentioned it, dark masculine is the part of you that wants to ravish your woman. It's the part that, is like the hunter, it's this primal part that wants to take your woman into deep surrender. And it has become very judged. And we've had this big Me Too movement in the last decade. And many men have got the message of like, oh, they're all men are rapists and I better not express that part. I want to be one of the good guys. Of course you want to be one of the good guys. But we're actually the whole people. We're not the good ones or the bad ones. We want to be the total ones. If you want to be in Tantra, you want to be total, which means you want to be all of it. You want to be sexy and spiritual integrated into one. So the dark masculine is that part of you, and there's a lot of energy there. When the dark masculine is cut off from the heart and consciousness, that's when it becomes dangerous. So we've seen that all over society, and there is rape and abuse happening, and that's where dark masculine is cut off from heart and consciousness. However, when it's integrated, it serves the feminine, it opens up the feminine. And you may notice many women are longing for that. And it can be confusion for men when they're like trying to be the nice guy, and then they see that women are going for the tattooed guy on his motorbike, or, like, what? Trying to be this good guy here. So we've all created this split between dark and light in various ways in society, and bringing it back together is a big part of our path. So with that, I'm going to move on to the practices, which is an absolute embodiment of light and dark coming together. So I first learned the self-pleasure practices when I went to Magic Chair. I'm trying to think what the year was, but maybe I'll just age myself if I say that. But when I first went up to train at Mantak Chier's place, Tao Garden, I learned that self-pleasure could be a meditation and a self-practice. And I was pretty blown away by that. Until that point, self-pleasure had been a bit of a release for me. It was like feeling an urge and then releasing it, and that was it. So then I learned, oh, wow, this is an energy practice to cultivate more energy and to raise energy through our chakras. How incredible is that? After I trained, I did my first week at Tao Garden. I rented a little cottage in the middle of nowhere in the northern part of Thailand. And I just sat in my cottage. I made a big altar, and I put like a goddess picture and candles. And I sat naked in front of my altar. I got my coconut oil. I started to massage my body, massage my breasts, massage my ovaries, and go into self-pleasure at the altar, and offer my orgasmic energy as an offering to the altar. In that one evening, I felt like I healed an entire childhood of religious conditioning that had told me that I had to choose between being sexual or being spiritual. In that one session, the relief. I got to bring my sexual energy to the altar and to feel it is not a choice. It is not an either or. There is nothing more holy and sacred than this energy. In classical Tantra, they have this beautiful theory that there's God and Goddess, or Shiva and Shakti. And God, or the creator, is the pure consciousness from whence everything was created. And all of creation is a manifestation of that source. And within the manifestation, there are very pure forms that are pure reflections of source. And then there are distorted forms. So like, we see like war and pain and trauma and suffering, and all of that's distorted divine. It's hard to see the divine in it, right? Because it's very distorted. But pure divinity, we see it with our eyes. And the two purest forms of divinity are nature and eros, sexual energy, which you might not have put together before. So when we look at nature, so many people find God through nature, or find some sense of the divine through nature. And that's because you're looking straight at the creation. You're not looking at the distortion, you're looking straight at the creation. And some places in nature, just like people are like, wow, this is heaven on earth. There's something so profound there. Well, the Tao Tantric artists say it's the same with sexual energy. Shakti is the pure manifestation of Shiva. Eros is the pure manifestation of God. This is completely different from what you might have learned in Bible class, I know. But actually, when you stop and look at it, when you even watch your partner sleeping at night and you watch her breath or his breath rising and falling, if you pause and think about it, that is the miracle of God incarnate there. That is life. You're looking at life rising and falling in their chest. You could worship that because it's a miracle. It's a miracle of life. Well, then next time you're watching her orgasm and you're watching ripples move through her body, notice again, that is God incarnate. You are witnessing pure divinity in form, because energy is divinity in form. Now that energy can start to crystallize and it forms our bodies, and then we start really distorting it, and we make things like this water bottle. This was once nature, but look how distorted it is now. It's a water bottle. So we can distort, and culture is sometimes culture reflects divinity, like the Sistine Chapel, but a lot of culture is reflecting distortion. It's reflecting pain and suffering and separation. So to see divinity in and through everything, we start to worship Eros. We start to worship that orgasmic energy that flows through our bodies and everyone else's bodies as that pure manifestation. So I'll give you that as a reframe for your own Eros as well as your partner's Eros, so that you can have that tantric perception. And with that, we can heal a lot of shame. So let's talk about what a solo practice looks like, and how it shifts. So self-pleasure, or masturbation, which is not a word I use a lot, is so much about building up energy, contracting against it, and then releasing it, right? So I already described that. So I'll do the male version. I could do the female version too, but and it's gone. Female version, this is my clitoris, and it's gone. So our solo practice, it needs to be very different. First of all, instead of waiting till nobody can hear you, turning out the lights, getting porn under the covers and being all shadowy about it, make your room like a temple. Feel that you're about to do a beautiful practice. That might mean having incense, might mean crystals, it might mean playing a certain kind of music, whatever it means for you. But shift the entire field from the guilt and shame shadow field into a light field. For example, I told you earlier that my first self-pleasure practice alone was I made an altar and I lit candles and I pleasured myself in front of an altar, and it changed everything for me. So I'm not saying there's only one way, but notice that if you are sneaking and hiding and shrinking and turning out lights and trying not to be heard, you're just piling all this shame and cutting yourself off from consciousness. So create a space that for you feels honoring of your body as a temple and of your Eros as the living divine in your temple. So this is the first step, is the setting. Second is consecration. So in Tantra, we offer our practice to our higher self, to our highest purpose, and for the greatest good of all living beings. Each of us has a different relationship with existence. Some of you are like the word God and have a feeling of God. Some of you, it's like, ugh, reminds me of Sunday school. Well, connect to the quantum field then, or the highest, greatest good for all living beings, or whatever works for you, source. Find your authentic connection to that is bigger than you, and offer your practice to that. And it might just be your highest potential. Just go with what's true for you. So we make that offering. And that is also about dedicating our sexual energy and our practice to our own evolution, to our own soul. So then when we are arousing energy, we want to get away from patterns that we're racing towards the goal, the point of no return. Usually we need to slow down. I know Tantra is famous for that. But if we are really like pumping our body until we ejaculate or until we climax, that we're just building up that tension. So what would happen? I'm going to use my water bottle again. It's my lingam. What would happen if you started to massage yourself slowly and deeply with deep breaths? Now, one important thing, this is a bit big, isn't it? I'm going to use this little bottle here. One important thing is to bring presence into the body before we start our self-pleasure practice. Many of us go into the head and go into fantasy or external porn rather than into the body. And we have a very disembodied sexuality. And there are people who, even when they're making love, they're not there. They're in fantasy. So the very first step of tantric sexuality is embodiment. And that's very healing. It heals a lot of trauma, and it brings consciousness and loving presence down into the body. How do we do that? Well, you can hold your sex, your lingam, and women, we could also hold our yonis in your hands and just feel the presence of your hands there. Feel the warmth of your hands. Take some deep breaths and have a sigh. And then just notice the sensations. We meditate on those sensations. So maybe you're noticing a pulsing in your cock, lingam, whatever you want to call it, penis. If you're just noticing warmth flowing in, and then you breathe into that sensation. I'm noticing a pulsing at my perineum. Okay, so going into embodiment practice brings us present into the physical body instead of continuing to be sexual from the mind. Then when we felt into the body, we can add some oil, some coconut oil, and start really slow massaging techniques where we're massaging our body and feeling the sensations that are happening as a result. So as I massage and breathe and sound, what do I feel? A very important part in your self-pleasure practice is to move your body. So notice whenever I'm showing the old style, it's like we move the hand, the body's just still, and we go, right? With conscious practice, which I'm here to show you, but you want to move your body around. And even move your body into your hands. So you start to take pleasure from your hands rather than doing something to your body with your hands. So we empower the pleasure in our body the sensation in our body to come and take its pleasure. This will make you a much better lover too, just as a side note. So moving your body into your hands, breathing and sounding. And whenever you go off into the head, you just pause and hold still and you come back to the sensations. Noticing a throbbing along the edge of my penis. I'm noticing whatever you're noticing. And then go back to movement. So we're learning. I just knocked that with my foot. It's all getting very exciting there. So we are learning how to try and get my light back on. Ta-da! We are learning how to have a really empowered sexuality. So when we are, when we are giving pleasure to ourselves, it's like we're coming from the head into the body. When we let our body move into our hands, we're learning how to let our body express itself and express our desire. So this is already a game changer. Sounds good, but my erection does not last long. Good that you bring this in. So erection doesn't matter in these practices. In fact, a lot of the times, the reason that you start losing erection over time is because it's so exhausting to be forcing our sexuality. So when we have the habit of like, our whole nervous system and body goes into like, oh my God, I've got to do this thing again. And our sexuality becomes very forced and very exhausting. Okay, so this is part of the habit that we were given. And the side effect of that habit is that it exhausts our body. And so we need to unlearn that one as well. So when you take that pressure off, when you're just massaging yourself and finding pleasure instead of giving yourself pleasure, it all turns around. What do I mean by finding pleasure? When we're trying to make something happen and we're very goal orientated, I've got to build up pleasure and then have an ejaculation. It's so much pressure. And then you have pressure in your love life too. Oh my God, I've got to be hard. And then I've got to have sex with her and I've got to ejaculate, I've got to help her come. And it's just pressure, 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 right? And it can take the fun out of it all. And not only that, but it really can affect the physical body until the body no longer participates. And it's like, I'm not even going to get hard. I'm not going to stay hard. So issues with erection are very much connected to too much pressure, having too much pressure. So part of our healing is to drop the pressure. Don't need to have a hard on. I don't need to ejaculate. I'm getting back into meditation. What's here now? What am I feeling? What feels good? You know, like I'm going to use my finger now so I can feel more. Like, what feels good here? Like instead of trying to make my finger hard, what if I just explore with breath? what feels good? There's always pleasure. Pleasure is used as meditation in Tantra. It's from the Vigyang Bhairav Tantra text, an ancient tantric text. We're taught that pleasure is such a portal to the eternal because pleasure always happens in this very moment. So if you are touching any part of your body, you can touch a finger right now if you like, touch a hand. If you're touching a part of your body and you feel that sensation, you breathe into it. You have to breathe. If you hold your breath, you won't feel pleasure. And you just look for pleasure. What's the most pleasurable thing I can find here right now? Oh, that feels really good. Instead of having the pressure of reaching a certain goal, of having a hard on, having an ejaculation, this, that, the other, pleasing our woman, we just drop into this moment of where is my pleasure right here and now. We take off all that pressure. And then the body responds with a lot of relief. It's like, oh, finally, that pressure is off and I can just relax. So there's a lot of work to do to undo the pressure, the tension, and the other habits that we have. So there's a journey to move from normal or mainstream sexuality to tantric sexuality. It's not an overnight job. It's a whole journey. And often, sometimes you feel like you go through a period of no man's land where it's like, I was really into these tension release orgasms, and now I'm just relaxing and massaging my lingam, but I'm not ejaculating, or I'm not having an orgasm. Where's it gone? Trust that period of exploring your sexuality outside of the old paradigm, because there's gold yet to come. And it comes one day when you're just relaxed and you're massaging and you're breathing, and suddenly it's like, the whole body is like moving into waves of pleasure like you never dreamed of before. So yeah, the question is here. So men don't need to ejaculate. Exactly. So, I'd say don't get hooked up on whether you ejaculate or not as the main goal. The main goal is, can I get aroused without tension? Can I get aroused without contracting? If you have that as your goal, then a lot of the problems will disappear. The problem of ejaculating too soon, the problem of not getting erection, the problem of not being able to ejaculate, the problem of not really enjoying sex, a lot of the problem of getting addicted to sex, a lot of those problems, if not all of them, disappear when we start practicing relaxed arousal and relaxed sexuality. Okay. And with that, many men suddenly notice, oh, wow, I'm having loads of pleasure. My body's going into full body orgasm sometimes, maybe all the time. And, oh, I haven't ejaculated for a few weeks. Okay. So this is how it is. So there's a little bit more to it. And I know I'm running out of time, but I'll just give you the rest of the nutshell. I don't want to leave you half empty with this. But so the first step is the relaxation and learning to find pleasure. And we call that cultivating sexual energy. And we're cultivating it not from porn, not from fantasy, not from Viagra. We cultivate it from the energy from the earth and our embodied sensation. So we have a number of meditations that help us to feel sensation in the perineum. We can do perineum exercises and massages. We can work with the testicles, testicle breathing, and a testicle massage, and really start to feel energy again building at the perineal floor and the sexual energy coming from the earth. And this is a much thicker, deeper, more sustained sexual energy than the stuff that we try and force out of our head. I have recently learned through another tantric practitioner that holding semen for longer than 14 days is not healthy. Have you thoughts on this? I've met people and had partners who have gone longer than 14 days. Mantak Chia himself, you have to read the exact books, but he went years without ejaculating. And then when he wanted a child, he released a few ejaculates to clear the old sperm. And then he created a child. So some people have gone years without a problem. The thing that I've noticed from working with various men and supporting them on this journey is if they're not pulling up the sexual energy, which is what I was getting to next, then they need to ejaculate. If they're pulling up the sexual energy fully up the spine and into the microcosmic orbit, then they don't feel that pressure there anymore. So the key to not ejaculating, if you like, to ejaculatory mastery is pulling up energy. If you're focused on not ejaculating, like I said at the beginning, you can run into problems and get a lot of tension, pain, blue balls, and it's not healthy. And there's a kind of constipated sexuality. That's not what we want. If that happens, then go ejaculate. But if you find you're pulling energy, you're doing Tao Tantric Qigong, you're learning to pull it up the spine, you're sublimating it, orgasmic upward draw, you're learning to really get the energy out of the pelvis and up to the higher chakras, you simply won't even think about ejaculating. It will just disappear, but there won't be any pain, there won't be any pressure, there won't be any frustration. And that's when you know it's okay. And it's not even a question of is it okay or not. And in terms of health, when people are really pulling up the sexual energy, then there appear to be no health issues there. So the health issues come from not ejaculating through force and just holding the semen still down and holding all the energy still down in the genitals. If we can pull it up and out, then it will disappear by itself. Okay, there's lots of questions coming in. A man often tells me he has to ejaculate for prostate health. So yeah, it's the same thing. If that pressure is there, then yes, then it's wanted to ejaculate. No man's land here. Please touch on trauma healing in the process. Okay, there's lots to cover and we're up to time. Wonder of Wonders, exquisite. Thank you so much. Laughing out loud. I was celibate for 15 years while teaching meditation. So tantric celibacy is about having full body orgasms. So you don't need to even have sex anymore to be very, very orgasmic. A thumbs up. Thank you. There are pranayama techniques that are excellent for directing sexual energy up the spine and not out of the lingam. Exactly. How many minutes must we do this practice? Okay, there's so much to do and I'm over time. So first step is cultivating sexual energy that I mentioned and getting embodiment practices and really being in the sex and in the lingam. Second step is learning how to draw the energy up the spine. And there are many great pranayama and Tao Tantric practices that help with this. A lot of them are using breath and muscles, intention, and opening up meridians and energy flow. And things like Tao Tantric Qigong is one of the best practices for this. So we learn with unaroused energy how to circulate the energy out of the pelvis and up through the spine and through the body. We learn with unaroused energy first. Once we've mastered that, we can add in like 20% of an orgasm. So we just get slightly aroused. We just massage our genitals a little bit, and then we start to circulate that energy. And that way we can build up the energy more and more so that you can start to implode orgasmic energy and pull it up into your higher centers without it needing to shoot out of your body. So this is the aim. We want to cultivate energy, circulate it, and the circulation is through the microcosmic orbit or the multi-orgasmic channel. Circulation is moving through these extraordinary meridians between the perineum and the crown, and we can circulate it in a wave-like motion endlessly. So you can go into lovemaking where your bodies are waving this energy and you're in this ocean of bliss and orgasm, and it goes on and on and on. The last thing is sublimation, which is to pull the energy in one go up out of the genitals, up to the higher centers. And this is sublimation because that sexual energy becomes sublime. And then we enter a state of meditation. It's not like you are doing meditation, you become meditation. So blissful that you just want to sit in that state. It's not like you're trying to meditate. It's that you are merged with the universe and it's so blissful that you just stay there. This is beautiful in solo practice, beautiful in lovemaking when both people go there and you know that you are in this higher state together. The last part is integration, where we pull the higher energies down. And in Taoist practice, we come to the dantian behind the navel, coming right into the center of the body, and we spiral the energies in and integrate them into our core channel, which is our I am nature, the essence of who you are, your center, so that we get to embody our higher self. We get to become more present in the body and become more of our higher self and less acting out our small self or our trauma body. So this is a little essence of the solo practices. Another meeting to go to. Yeah. So I need to wrap up now because I also have another meeting to go to. It's Mary Magdalene Day. And so here in Glastonbury, there's a lot of events happening. But yeah, I just, to wrap up, want to get you excited about these practices and have you be curious about what else is out there, and to learn some of these practices, not because there's anything wrong with how you are, but because there's more out there. I always feel like our body's like a musical instrument, and we learn to play a particular type of music, and then one day we realize, oh wow, there's classical and jazz and there's rock and there's reggae and there's soul. And so it is with our sexuality. We all know how to make love. It's like built into our system. You're a perfect lover as you are, and there's more. And learning how to use sexuality as part of our meditation practice is really a fulfilling practice to have. Thanks for the background story and about the Neo Tantra being so experience-based and not teaching personal energy practices. It was very clear of what I felt, a big limitation with the Neo Tantra scene. Good to hear your voice again. I hope to see you again soon. So Minka DeVos and I are leading a whole course for men in September. So if you want to go into these practices, this is a deep, deep, deep training. This is not like a little online course. We decided to teach the equivalent of our women's training to men, but to teach it online so that you have the privacy of doing sexual practices in your own private space. So when we have women, we all get naked together and do the practices together in one room, which is very lovely. But when we're working with men, that doesn't quite work. So we are teaching online with 6 hours of classes 3 times a week for the whole of September. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Minka DeVos is my co-teacher. She's actually been teaching for 40 years, and she's in Mantak Chia's inner circle. She's been with Mantak Chia since 1986. She's one of the greatest facilitators of the Tao Tantric Arts out there. And so we decided together, we had so many men saying, when are you going to do this for men? And we both worked with men for decades, mostly one-on-one. She's also been teaching group classes. So we decided to teach everything to men, which will be the Qigong practices, the embodiment practices, the self-pleasure practices, and then also how to apply it to lovemaking. How do you exchange energy with a partner in different ways? How do you direct your energy into your partner? How do you help your partner to feel safe? How do you help a woman open up if you're with a female partner? Mostly the focus is on solo practices, because that's how the Taoist practices are. It's like become a master of your own sexual energy, and then your lovemaking is just going to transform anyway. But we have a few classes on sharing these practices with a partner as well. If you're interested in that, we have a couple of our practitioners, Shane and Emmanuel, are there to answer any questions if you want to talk more with them about the practices, or you can just sign up and join. I will send out an email to you all, or you can go to taotantricarts.com. I will write it in here, taotantricarts.com, and then we have a page which is literally /men. For men. There you go. So you can go to taotantricarts.com for men and find out more about that training there. It's really it's the fullest training that we could put together, because Minka's going to retire soon. So we decided to really put all the teachings for men in one place. And partly this is because every time I've been asked, I have looked online and I cannot find a training that's comprehensive enough to recommend to men. And both of us have worked a lot with men and male sexual practices. So this is going to be the course. And like I said, there'll be times when we're teaching the theory, times when we're teaching how to work with the breath and the meridians, and then times where we'll ask you to turn off your cameras and your sound, and we'll guide you through self-pleasure practices. If that makes you uncomfortable to do live, you can also watch the recordings and do it on your own. But it's also very powerful to create a field around the world where we're all moving this energy towards a shared intention together. So yes, you're welcome to come along and join us on that. And if not, you find me at a whole bunch of festivals and events throughout the year, as well as online. Thank you so much for joining me here. And thank you for all of your questions and interactions. And thank you for all the enthusiastic comments. I really appreciate and enjoy that. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Shashi the Supreme. Thank you, love. Hope to see you all again soon.